The crimson dust of Titan's rest swirled violently around the settlement's protective barriers as another storm battered the remote mining colony. Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his brow, his weathered hand still steady despite the tremor that ran through them whenever he thought about the past. The hydroponics bay needed repairs again, and the atmospheric processors were running at 60% efficiency, barely enough to keep the colony's 200 residents breathing comfortably. "Papa, why does the sky look angry?" Nova asked, her small voice cutting through the mechanical hum of the greenhouse. At 4 years old, she possessed an uncanny ability to read emotions, both in people and apparently in weather patterns. Her silver-blue skin, inherited from her mother, shimmered faintly in the artificial sunlight, while her human father's brown eyes gazed out at him with innocent curiosity. Marcus knelt beside his daughter, adjusting the nutrient flow to a struggling tomato plant. "It's just a dust storm, little star. The wind picks up the sand and throws it around like a tantrum. It'll pass." Nova giggled, her pointed ears, another gift from her Luxarian heritage, twitching with amusement. "Like when I throw my toys when I'm upset." Exactly like that, Marcus smiled, though his heart clenched at the familiar gesture. Those ears, that laugh, the way she tilted her head when thinking, every day, Nova reminded him more of Zephyr. For years hadn't dulled the ache of abandonment, hadn't made the questions any easier to answer when Nova asked about her mother. The settlement's communication array crackled to life, interrupting his thoughts. "Attention all residents, incoming vessel requesting emergency landing clearance. Luxarian signature detected. Repeat, Luxarian vessel approaching through the storm." Marcus's blood turned to ice. His hand instinctively moved to the plasma cutter on his belt, old habits from his military days died hard. No Luxarian had visited Titan's rest since the day Nova was born. The day her mother disappeared without a word, without explanation, without looking back. "Papa, what does Luxarian mean?" Nova asked, her telepathic sensitivity picking up on his sudden tension. Before Marcus could answer, the bay door hissed open. Through the swirling dust stepped a figure that haunted his dreams and nightmares in equal measure. Zephyra stood silhouetted against the amber stormlight, her silver-blue skin now bearing intricate bioluminescent tattoos that pulsed softly across her arms and neck, marks of high status among her people. Her hair, once a cascade of midnight black, now held strands of starlight silver woven through it. The flowing robes she wore were finer than anything in the colony, marking her as someone of importance. But it was her eyes, those deep violet eyes that had captured his heart during a chance encounter at a trade station, that made his breath catch. They were filled with pain, longing, and something that looked like hope. "Marcus," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality of her species. "I know I have no right to be here." Nova stepped out from behind her father, her small frame rigid with confusion and recognition. Despite having no conscious memory of her mother, something deep within her responded to Zephyr's presence. The child's natural telepathic abilities, still developing, created a faint connection between them. "You're the one in my dreams," Nova whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm. Zephyr's composure cracked. She fell to her knees, her elegant robes pooling around her on the dusty floor. "My beautiful little star," she breathed, reaching out with trembling hands before stopping herself. I wasn't sure you would remember me." "Remember you?" Marcus's voice was rough with barely contained emotion. "She was 6 months old when you left. She doesn't remember you because you were never here long enough to matter." The words hit their mark, and Zephyr flinched as if struck. "You're right. I have no excuse, no justification that could make up for what I did. But please, Marcus, let me explain. Let me try to make amends." "For years," Marcus said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "For years of midnight fevers when she was sick and I had no idea if Luxarian physiology would react the same way to human medicine. For years of her asking why she looks different from the other children. For years of her crying herself to sleep because she thought her mother didn't love her enough to stay. Each accusation landed like a physical blow, and Zephra's bioluminescent markings flickered with distress. She was all I thought about. Every single day, every moment. Then why didn't you come back? The question exploded from Marcus with 4 years of pain behind it. Why didn't you send word? Why didn't you? Because I was afraid, Zephra interrupted, her voice breaking. Because my father is Elder Vex of the Luxarian High Council, and when he learned about us, about her, he threatened to have you both killed. He said our union was an abomination, that our child was a corruption of pure Luxarian blood. Nova stepped forward, her small hand slipping into Marcus's larger one. Papa, why is the pretty lady crying? Marcus looked down at his daughter, seeing her innocence, her pure heart that accepted love wherever it came from. Then he looked at Zephra, seeing the woman who had once made him believe in happily ever after, who had given him the greatest gift of his life before tearing his heart out. Because, he said softly, sometimes grown-ups make mistakes they can't fix. But you always tell me that mistakes can be fixed if you try hard enough and say sorry, Nova said, her logic unassailable in the way only children could manage. Zephra's eyes filled with tears that shimmered like liquid starlight. She's right. I want to try, Marcus. I want to fix this. I've spent 4 years finding the courage to stand up to my father, to choose love over duty, to choose our family over tradition. And what happens when he comes for us? Marcus asked. When he decides that tolerance has limits? Then we face it together, Zephra said, rising to her feet. As a family. As partners. As parents who love their child more than their own safety. The storm outside began to calm, and the amber light filtering through the greenhouse walls softened to a warm glow. Nova looked between her parents, her young mind processing emotions too complex for her years but her heart understanding something fundamental. Are you my mama? She asked Zephra directly. Yes, little star, Zephra whispered. I'm your mama, and I'm so sorry I went away. I'm so sorry I wasn't here to watch you grow, to teach you about the stars and the songs of our people. Nova considered this for a long moment, then walked over to stand directly in front of Zephra. Papa says that when you love someone, you don't leave them behind. He says that's what makes a family. Your papa is very wise, Zephra said, kneeling again to be at Nova's eye level. And he's right. I broke the most important rule of love, and I hurt you both. But if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life making up for it. Marcus watched this exchange, his heart warring between the love that had never truly died and the pain that had festered for 4 years. Nova deserved to know her mother, deserved to understand her heritage, deserved to have the complete family he'd never been able to give her alone. You can stay, he said finally, his voice carefully neutral. There's an empty quarters unit in Sector 7. But this isn't forgiveness, Zephra. This is me giving our daughter a chance to know her mother. Nothing more. Relief flooded Zephra's features, and her bioluminescent markings brightened with hope. Thank you. I swear to you, Marcus, I won't disappoint her again. I won't disappoint you. As the storm finally cleared outside, leaving Titan's Rest gleaming under the light of 3 setting suns, Marcus couldn't help but wonder if he was making the right choice. But when he saw Nova slip her small hand into Zephra's larger one, saw the pure joy on his daughter's face, he knew that whatever came next, he would face it for her. The woman who had once been his everything was back, and whether that meant salvation or destruction remained to be seen. But for the first time in 4 years, Nova had her mother, and perhaps that was enough to start healing the wounds that had never quite scarred over. Outside, the stars began to appear in the clearing sky, and Marcus found himself remembering a night 4 years ago when he and Zephra had mapped constellations together, planning a future that seemed as infinite as the cosmos above them. Maybe, just maybe, the stars were aligning for a second chance. The first week of Zephra's return passed in a careful dance of boundaries and stolen glances. Marcus maintained his emotional distance during the day, focusing on his engineering duties while Nova spent her mornings with her mother, learning about Luxarian customs and language. But in the quiet moments, when he caught Zephra humming ancient lullabies while braiding Nova's hair, or when he saw his daughter's eyes light up as she mastered a new telepathic exercise, he felt the walls around his heart developing hairline cracks. "She's teaching me to speak with my mind, Papa," Nova announced over breakfast, her excitement bubbling over as she demonstrated by projecting a simple image of a flower directly into Marcus's thoughts. The sensation was gentle, warm, like a whispered secret meant only for him. "That's incredible, little star," Marcus said, genuinely amazed. He'd always known Nova possessed telepathic abilities, they'd manifested in small ways since she was 2, but under Zephyr's guidance, they were flourishing. Grandmother Petra, the colony's eldest resident and unofficial caretaker for all the children, chuckled from her seat at the communal dining table. "That child has more gifts than a festival day. Zephyr is doing well with her, Marcus. You can see it in how Nova carries herself now, more confident, more complete." Marcus nodded, unable to deny the truth in the older woman's words. Petra had been like a surrogate grandmother to Nova, filling some of the gaps left by Zephyr's absence, and her approval meant everything to him. "The question is," Petra continued, her weathered hands wrapped around her morning tea, "what are you going to do about the elephant in the room?" "What elephant?" Marcus asked, though he knew exactly what she meant. "The one where you're still head over heels in love with that woman, and she's looking at you like you hung the moons," Petra said with the bluntness that came with 8 decades of life. "Don't think I haven't noticed the way you both light up when you're in the same room, then immediately pretend you don't." Before Marcus could respond, Jackson Reeves burst through the dining hall doors, his engineer's jumpsuit covered in grease and his sandy hair disheveled. "Marcus, we've got a problem with the atmospheric processor in Sector 12. I need your expertise before we all start breathing recycled fumes." Grateful for the interruption, Marcus rose from his seat. "Duty calls. Nova, behave for Grandmother Petra, and remember. Stay away from the mining equipment, don't wander beyond the perimeter markers, and always tell someone where I'm going," Nova recited dutifully. "I know, Papa." As Marcus and Jackson walked toward the malfunctioning processor, Jackson shot him a sideways look. "So, how are you holding up? Having your ex back in town can't be easy." "She's not my ex," Marcus said automatically, then paused. "I mean, we didn't exactly have a conventional relationship." "Right, just a cosmic love affair that produced the most gifted child in the colony," Jackson said dryly. "Nothing conventional about that at all." They reached the processor, and Marcus immediately began diagnosing the problem. The familiar routine of troubleshooting mechanical issues provided a welcome distraction from the emotional turbulence of the past week. "You know," Jackson said as he handed Marcus a plasma wrench, "I've been watching Zephyr around the colony. She's not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know, someone cold, maybe. Aloof. Someone who could walk away from their own child without looking back." Jackson secured a loose coupling while Marcus rerouted power flow. "But she's not like that at all. She looks at Nova like she's seeing a miracle, and she looks at you like she's dying of thirst and you're the last water in the universe." Marcus's hand stilled on the wrench. "Jax. I'm just saying, maybe she had reasons for leaving that were bigger than not wanting to be here. Maybe she's not the villain you've made her out to be in your head." The processor hummed back to life, its steady rhythm restoring proper atmospheric circulation to the sector. Marcus wished fixing his personal life could be as straightforward as repairing machinery. That evening, Marcus found himself drawn to the colony's observation deck, a small platform that offered a clear view of the 3 moons that orbited their world. He often came here when he needed to think, to process the complexities of single parenthood and the weight of responsibility that came with keeping a frontier settlement running. He wasn't surprised to find Zephyr already there, her silver-blue skin luminescent under the moonlight. She stood at the railing, her bioluminescent markings pulsing slowly in a pattern he remembered from their time together, a sign of deep contemplation among her people. "I used to come here every night," she said without turning around, somehow sensing his presence. "After I left. I would project my consciousness across the stars, trying to catch glimpses of you and Nova. It was agony, but I couldn't stop myself. Marcus joined her at the railing, maintaining careful distance between them. Why didn't you just come back sooner? Because I was a coward, Zephyra said simply. And because the political situation was more complicated than I initially realized. My father didn't just threaten you, he had agents watching every human settlement within 50 light-years. If I had returned, I would have led them straight to you. She turned to face him, and Marcus was struck anew by her ethereal beauty. The years had added depth to her features, maturity to her bearing, but she was still the woman who had made him believe in love at first sight. I spent 4 years building a network of allies within the Luxarian Council, she continued. Progressive voices who believe in peaceful coexistence, in the beauty of genetic diversity rather than its supposed corruption. It took time to neutralize my father's influence, to create a safe space where I could return without bringing destruction down on your heads. And you think you've succeeded? Marcus asked. I think I've bought us time, Zephyra said honestly. But Elder Vex is not a man who accepts defeat gracefully. He'll come for us eventually, and when he does, we need to be ready. The gravity of her words settled between them, and Marcus found himself looking at her with new understanding. She hadn't just abandoned them, she'd been protecting them, even at the cost of her own happiness. Nova asks about you sometimes, he said quietly. She used to have dreams, visions, really, where she could see you. She'd wake up crying, saying that the pretty lady with silver skin was sad and far away. Zephyra's breath caught. I felt her too. Her telepathic abilities are remarkable, she was reaching across space to touch my mind, even as an infant. It's how I knew she was sick last winter, how I was able to send medical supplies through intermediaries. That was you? The anonymous benefactor who left the Luxarian healing crystals at the supply depot? I couldn't let her suffer when I had the means to help, Zephyra said. I may have been absent, but I never stopped being her mother. I never stopped loving her, or you. The confession hung in the air between them, fragile and dangerous. Marcus felt his carefully constructed defenses wavering, the old attraction stirring to life despite his better judgment. Zephyra. I know, she said, stepping back. I know I have no right to expect forgiveness, let alone love. But I needed you to know that leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done. Every day away from you felt like dying slowly. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the gentle hum of the colony's life support systems and the distant laughter of children playing in the residential sector. Marcus found himself remembering other nights like this, when they had stood together planning a future that seemed as limitless as the stars above. She wants to know about Luxarian mating ceremonies, Marcus said suddenly, surprising himself with the admission. Zephyra's markings flickered with amusement. What did you tell her? That I didn't know enough about her mother's culture to explain it properly, Marcus admitted. She's 4 years old and already asking questions I can't answer. I could teach her, Zephyra offered carefully. About our traditions, our history, the beauty of our customs. She deserves to know both sides of her heritage. Marcus nodded slowly. She'd like that. She's hungry for knowledge about where she comes from. As if summoned by their conversation, Nova appeared at the entrance to the observation deck, rubbing sleepy eyes with small fists. Papa? Grandmother Petra said you were up here. I had another dream. Marcus immediately went to his daughter, scooping her up in his arms. What kind of dream, little star? The kind where I could see colors that don't have names, Nova said, snuggling against his chest. And there were singing stars, and a big celebration with people dancing in the light. Zephyra approached slowly, her expression filled with wonder. That sounds like a bonding ceremony, little one. A very special celebration where two people promise to love each other forever. Like you and Papa? Nova asked with the innocent directness of childhood. The question caught both adults off guard, and Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. Nova, it's more complicated than that. Not complicated to me, Nova said with a yawn. In my dream, you were both happy. And there was another baby, one with Papa's eyes and your skin. Zephyra gasped softly, her hand moving instinctively to her abdomen. Marcus noticed the gesture and felt something shift deep in his chest, a recognition, a possibility he hadn't dared consider. Dreams can be powerful things, Zephyra said carefully. Especially for someone with your gifts. But they don't always mean what we think they mean. This one did, Nova said with the certainty that only children possessed. This one felt real. Like it was supposed to happen. As Marcus carried his daughter back to their quarters, he couldn't shake the image Nova had painted, a future where they were whole, where love had triumphed over fear and tradition. It was a dangerous dream, one that could lead to heartbreak or happiness in equal measure. But as he tucked Nova into bed and saw Zephyra lingering in the doorway, her expression soft with maternal love, Marcus began to wonder if perhaps his daughter's visions weren't prophecy at all. Maybe they were simply hope, given form and voice by a child who wanted nothing more than a complete family. And maybe, Marcus thought as he watched Zephyra sing Nova to sleep in the musical language of her people, hope was enough to start rebuilding what had been broken. 3 weeks had passed since that night on the observation deck, and the careful distance Marcus had maintained between himself and Zephyra was slowly eroding. It started with small things, shared glances across the dining hall, the way their hands would brush when passing Nova between them, the comfortable silence that fell when they worked together in the hydroponics bay while Nova played nearby. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday evening when Nova fell ill with a fever that had Marcus pacing the medical bay in barely contained panic. Human medicine had always been a gamble with her mixed physiology, and this time the usual treatments weren't working. Her temperature's rising, Marcus said, his voice tight with worry as he monitored the readings. The cooling systems aren't having any effect. Zephyra moved to Nova's bedside, her hands glowing with a soft bioluminescent light as she placed them on their daughter's forehead. This isn't a human illness, she said softly. It's Luxarian puberty fever, early, but not unheard of in hybrid children. Her telepathic abilities are expanding rapidly. Is she going to be okay? Marcus asked, his medical training feeling woefully inadequate in the face of his daughter's alien heritage. She needs to be guided through the transition, Zephyra explained, her markings pulsing in rhythm with Nova's labored breathing. It requires both parents, one to anchor her to her human side, one to guide her through the Luxarian transformation. We have to do this together, Marcus. Without hesitation, Marcus moved to Nova's other side, taking her small hand in his. Tell me what to do. What followed was the most intimate experience of Marcus's life. With Zephyra's guidance, he opened his mind to his daughter's expanding consciousness, feeling the raw power of her telepathic abilities as they bloomed like flowers in fast forward. Through their connection, he could sense Zephyra's presence, warm, protective, desperately loving, and for the first time in 4 years, they were truly united in purpose. The process took hours. Marcus lost track of time as he helped Nova navigate the overwhelming flood of telepathic input, teaching her to filter thoughts and emotions, to build mental barriers, to control rather than be controlled by her gifts. Zephyra wove Luxarian healing techniques through their connection, her ancient knowledge complementing his steady human presence. When Nova's fever finally broke, all 3 of them were exhausted but exhilarated. Nova's eyes, when they opened, held a new depth of understanding that made her seem older than her 4 years. I can hear the stars singing, she whispered, wonder in her voice. They're so beautiful, Papa. Mama, can you hear them too? Yes, little star, Zephyra said, tears streaming down her face. You did so well. You're so brave, so strong. As Nova drifted into healing sleep, Marcus and Zephyra remained by her bedside, neither wanting to break the spell of connection that had formed between them. Their hands were still linked across Nova's bed, and Marcus realized he didn't want to let go. Thank you, he said quietly. I couldn't have done that without you. She could have died, and I wouldn't have known how to save her. She's our daughter, Zephyra replied simply. She needs both of us, Marcus. She always has. The truth of those words settled deep in Marcus's chest, and he found himself really looking at Zephyra for the first time since her return, not as the woman who had abandoned them, but as Nova's mother, as his partner in the most important job either of them would ever have. "I've been thinking about what you said," he admitted. "About the reasons you left. About protecting us." Zephyr's markings flickered with nervous energy. And I think I've been too angry to see past my own hurt," Marcus said. "I know what it's like to make impossible choices to protect the people you love. I did 2 tours in the Colonial Defense Force before I came to Titan's Rest. I understand sacrifice." "Marcus. Let me finish," he said gently. "I'm not saying it doesn't still hurt. I'm not saying I can just forget 4 years of raising her alone, of wondering if I was making the right choices, of missing you so much it felt like a physical ache." Zephyr's breath caught, and her bioluminescent markings began to pulse in the pattern he remembered from their most intimate moments together. "But I'm saying I understand now," Marcus continued. "And I'm saying that watching you with Nova these past weeks, seeing how much you love her, how much you've sacrificed for her safety, it's made me remember why I fell in love with you in the first place." The admission hung between them like a bridge neither had dared to build. Zephyr's eyes filled with tears that caught the light like liquid diamonds. "I never stopped loving you," she whispered. "Even when I thought I'd lost the right to your love forever. Even when I thought I'd destroyed any chance we might have had." Marcus stood slowly, moving around Nova's bed to stand before Zephyr. "Maybe we can't go back to what we were," he said, reaching out to cup her face in his hands. "But maybe we can build something new. Something stronger." Their first kiss in 4 years was gentle, tentative, filled with the weight of everything they'd lost and the possibility of everything they might find again. Zephyr's markings blazed with joy, and Marcus felt his own heart opening like a flower after a long winter. "I want to try," Zephyr said against his lips. "I want to be the partner you deserve, the mother Nova needs. I want to build a life with you, Marcus. A real life, here on Titan's Rest. Even if it means giving up your status among the Luxarians. Even if it means your father might come for us. Especially then," Zephyr said fiercely. "You and Nova are my home. You're my family. Everything else is just politics and tradition." They spent that night talking, sharing 4 years of experiences, fears, and dreams. Marcus told her about Nova's first steps, her first telepathic projection, the way she hummed in her sleep just like her mother. Zephyr shared her own stories, the political maneuvering that had kept them safe, the loneliness that had nearly driven her to madness, the network of allies she'd built who believed in a future where humans and Luxarians could coexist. As dawn broke over Titan's Rest, they found themselves curled together on the medical bay's couch, watching Nova sleep peacefully. The easy intimacy felt both foreign and familiar, like coming home after a long journey. "There's something I need to tell you," Zephyr said, her voice soft with morning drowsiness. "Something I've been waiting for the right moment to share." Marcus felt his heart skip. "What is it?" Zephyr took his hand and placed it on her abdomen, where the faintest curve suggested what he'd begun to suspect. "Nova's dreams weren't just prophecy," she said. "They were recognition. We're going to have another child, Marcus." The news hit him like a meteor strike, unexpected, earth-shaking, and absolutely right. "How long have you known?" "Since the second week I was back," Zephyr admitted. "That night we spent together, when we reconnected, it was more than just physical. Our bond created something beautiful." Marcus's hand spread across her belly, imagining the life growing there, their second chance, their future made manifest. "Are you sure about this? About us? Because once we do this, there's no going back. I won't let you leave again." "I'm sure," Zephyr said, covering his hand with hers. "I've never been more sure of anything. I want to marry you, Marcus. I want to raise our children together. I want to grow old with you under these stars. Even if it means facing your father. Even if it means war. Then we'll face it together," Zephyr said. "As partners, as parents, as a family. Whatever comes, we don't run anymore." Nova stirred in her sleep, and both parents held their breath. But instead of waking, she smiled and murmured something in Luxarian that made Zephyr gasp. "What did she say?" Marcus asked. "She said, 'Thank you for coming home, Mama.' 'Thank you for staying, Papa.' The baby is happy too." Zephyr's voice was filled with wonder. "She can sense her sibling already. Her abilities are even stronger than I realized." Marcus pulled Zephyr closer, feeling the pieces of his shattered heart finally beginning to heal. "We're going to need to expand our quarters," he said practically. "And we'll need to prepare for the possibility that your father won't approve of another mixed heritage grandchild." "Let him come," Zephyr said, her markings pulsing with determination. "I have allies now, Marcus. Progressive Luxarians who believe in the future our children represent. And I have you, the strongest, most honorable man I've ever known." As the colony began to wake around them, Marcus and Zephyr made their plans. They would announce their engagement to the community, start preparing for the challenges ahead, and begin building the life they'd always dreamed of. It wouldn't be easy, love never was when it crossed species lines, but it would be worth fighting for. Nova woke with the sunrise, her new telepathic abilities immediately picking up on the emotional shift in her parents. "You're happy," she observed, sitting up in bed with a sleepy smile. "Both of you. Together happy." "Yes, little star," Marcus said, lifting her into his arms. "We're together happy. And Mama's staying." "Mama's staying," Zephyr confirmed, joining their embrace. "Forever and always, my beautiful daughter." Nova's delighted laughter filled the medical bay, and Marcus felt a peace he hadn't experienced in 4 years settle over him. They were a family again, broken, healing, but whole in the ways that mattered most. The future stretched ahead of them, uncertain but bright with possibility. And whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together, united by love that had proven stronger than time, distance, and the vast emptiness between stars.